With Spider-Man making his Marvel Cinematic Universe debut, it's something of a relief that it's rather good, because the web-slinger's track record has been a bit hit and miss in Hollywood, with most fans agreeing that Spider-Man 2 is his only true definitive outing prior to Tom Holland's spandex days. But for every botched attempt at a Spider-Man film, 2 others have been struck down long before the actors even made it in front of the cameras. I'm Ben from Whatculture, and here are 8 Spider-Man movies that almost happened. Number 8. Spider-Man 4. Although director Sam Raimi was unhappy with the way Spider-Man 3 turned out, he set to work on Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst due to reprise their roles. He even got as far as lining up actors to play the film's villains, with John Malkovich negotiating to portray the Vulture and Anne Hathaway mooted as the Black Cat. Concept art from the film surfaced in 2016, revealing an opening montage in which Spidey takes on a band of villains, including the Shocker, the Prowler, and Rhino, as well as outing Vulture as the primary antagonist. But it wasn't to be. A script for Spider-Man 4 underwent various rewrites before the plug was pulled on the project due to a dispute between Sony and Raimi, who felt he was unable to complete the film within the studio's deadline. Number 7. Spider-Man 5 and 6. Yeah! Although Spidey 5 and 6 were no more than twinkles in the eye of Sony Pictures, the studio hired James Vanderbilt to draw up screenplays for the sequels nonetheless. Little is known about where the Tobey Maguire series would have headed, but unused ideas that Sam Raimi had discussed could well have ended up on the roadmap. For instance, the director had previously expressed interest in transforming Dylan Baker's version of Dr. Kurt Connors into the Lizard and promoting Bruce Campbell from a cameo appearance to the role of the villainous Mysterio. Number 6. James Cameron's Spider-Man. The cinematic rights to Spider-Man were passed from pillar to post throughout the 1980s, and by the early 90s they were under the ownership of Carolco Pictures. It was during these wilderness years that Terminator director James Cameron had a stab at a Spidey screenplay, and it was fucking mental. Cameron envisaged an adults-only Spider-Man haunted by weird nightmares who has a penchant for swearing and getting jiggy on New York landmarks. The script was actually a revised version of an earlier screenplay and featured all new takes on Sandman and Electro as its villains, and a climactic battle atop the World Trade Center during which Spidey reveals his secret identity to Mary Jane. Ultimately, financial problems and a complex legal dispute forced Carolco to abandon its Spidey ambitions in 1992. Number 5. The Amazing Spider-Man 3. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was desperate to set the groundwork for several expanded universe titles, with Easter eggs and potential sequel setups in every other scene. Mark Webb, who helmed the first 2 Andrew Garfield installments, was officially announced as the director for The Amazing Spider-Man 3 in February 2014, and Garfield's contract compelled him to make at least one more outing, so what went wrong? Money. Number 2 just didn't make the box office gains it needed to make a sequel viable. Number 4. Sinister 6. The villain-centric Sinister 6 was essentially Sony Pictures' answer to the Avengers, or an anti-Avengers project, if you will. Drew Goddard was attached to write and direct the movie, which would have been the story of redemption with a bad guy lineup that pulls from the comics. If all had gone to plan, we would have seen this version of Sinister 6 by now, as its release date was pegged for November the 11th, 2016, but the project met its demise when the rights to Spider-Man returned to Marvel. With Spider-Man spin-offs back on at Sony, however, there is a possibility it may return in some form. Number 3. A female-focused Spider-Man spin-off. At one point, there were firm plans in place to release a female-focused Spider-Man spin-off at some point in 2017 as part of Sony Pictures' shared universe obsession. Who this spin-off would have focused on was actually never announced, but the prime candidates were Spider-Woman or Spider-Girl, with Silver Sable, Black Cat, Stunner, and Firestar also touted as candidates. Westworld screenwriter Lisa Joy would have provided a script for the film had it entered production, but like Sinister 6, we may never see this project as it was originally envisaged due to its shared DNA with Amazing Spider-Man. Number 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 4. These bloody sequels. The Amazing Spider-Man 4 is a more tenuous concept than a third Andrew Garfield movie, but it did have a release date penciled in, the 4th of May, 2018, Star Wars Day. So what else do we know about this ill-fated film? Well, for starters, it wouldn't have been directed by Mark Webb, who confirmed plans to vacate the director's chair while remaining on board as a series advisor. Sony's proposed Spider-Man universe would have presumably been in full swing, hey, by this point, with the Sinister 6 and female-focused spin-off scheduled to arrive before Amazing Spider-Man 4. Number 1. Canon Films' Spider-Man. Back in 1985, long before Marvel licensed Spider-Man out to Sony Pictures, the comic book giant trusted Canon Films with the character's film rights, which was a mistake. Apparently, the Canon chiefs initially misunderstood the concept of Spider-Man, believing Spider-Man to be some kind of horror-esque monstrosity in the vein of the Wolfman or the Fly. How does that happen? How do you mess up that badly? So they hired Outer Limits creator Leslie Stevens to pen a script about a hairy, suicidal, 8-armed monster who battles other mutated creatures in a laboratory after refusing to become part of a mad scientist's master race, and oh my god! Fortunately, Spidey creator Stan Lee intervened before this bonkers concept could progress any further, and angered by the debasement of his creation, Lee pushed for canon to throw their weight behind a new screenplay which told a more traditional Spidey story with Doc Ock as the villain. And that's our list. Make sure you subscribe to the Whatculture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I'm Ben from Whatculture, and thanks for watching.
Oh, hello there. I'm billionaire philanthropist, not Bruce Wayne, and as you may have heard, we've actually started up a Whatculture comics channel. Oh, that's better. Where you can go for all the comics lists, all the comics news, and all the comics discussion. So go and subscribe to Whatculture Comics for loads of amazing comics coverage.